He said he was attacked by MAGA country. Did you ever hear that one? That's an embarrassment not only to Chicago, that is an embarrassment to our country, what took place there.
Last night in Michigan, President Trump weighing in on the Jussie Smollett saga. He says the FBI and the DOJ will, quote, review what happened, why the case was dropped, leading some lawmakers to accuse him of being a racist. This is from the Congressional Black Caucus, saying, quote, the president's silence on the rise of white nationalism across the country only signals his complicity. Where was his call for an investigation when white nationalists marched across the campus of the University of Virginia? Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel also slamming the president, claiming that he is the reason that Smollett allegedly faked his hate crime.
Let me be really clear about something. The only reason Jussie Smollett thought he could take advantage of a hoax about a hate crime is for the environment, the toxic environment that Donald Trump created.
Here now, Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire and author of the new book, The Right Side of History. It's a #1 New York Times bestseller. They cannot keep it in stock. Ben, congratulations on the new book. Good to see you tonight.
Yeah, great to see you, too.
So, you know, what do you make of the women from the Congressional Black Caucus and Rahm Emanuel saying, look, you know, this kind of thing, this Jussie Smollett thing wouldn't be happening if it weren't for the tensions that exist in this country thanks to President Trump?
Well, it's obviously untrue. I mean, we've seen racial hoaxes before, going all the way back to Al Sharpton in the 1980s. The story here is that there is an actor who wanted to increase his pay, according to the Chicago Police Department, until he decided to perpetuate a racial hoax and slander half the country in the process, believing that it would make him more popular and more marketable, particularly with the people in Hollywood. That's the entire story. And he didn't mind if he slandered the Chicago Police Department. He didn't mind if he slandered Rahm Emanuel, the city of Chicago. By the way, it is worth noting that the CBC representative saying that President Trump's feds didn't investigate Charlottesville. It's just not true. The FBI did investigate Charlottesville. The DOJ did a civil rights investigation of Charlottesville as well. So that is just factually false.
Let's take a look. This is the host, Anthony Anderson, who's hosting the NAACP Awards. And at that awards ceremony, Jussie Smollett had previously been nominated for a Best Supporting Actor award. And here's what the host said about that.
I hope he wins. I'm happy for him. The system worked for him in his favor because the system isn't always fair, especially for people of color.
I think that's very interesting. He said the system worked for him in his favor because the system isn't always fair. I mean, you know, there's a lot of ways you could read into that statement.
Well, it seems like what he's trying to say is that social justice ought to trump individual justice. In other words, he believes the criminal justice system is biased against presumably black people and gay people, and Jussie Smollett happens to be black and gay. And therefore, even though he's obviously guilty by all available evidence and according to the prosecutor's office that just dismissed the charges, he's guilty. Despite that, he should be let off the hook because it's sort of payback for the system not working for other people. Yeah. That is a fundamental violation of principles of justice. If somebody is guilty of a crime, they ought to do the time, regardless of their intersectional credentials being in order.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I just go back to the fact that he's still saying that he was a victim of a hate crime. So I want to know why he's not pressing for an investigation into what happened. His lawyer said this morning that it's possible that the brothers that we saw in this whole story maybe were wearing whiteface underneath the mask that led Jussie Smollett to think that maybe it was a white person that was assaulting him. I mean, it just gets crazier.
And my theory of the crime is that it was actually Virginia Governor Ralph Northam dressed in blackface and then dressed in whiteface on top of the blackface. That's my going theory of the crime.
Moving right along. The Economist came after you. They were talking about your book. They did an interview with you on the book, which is, talks a lot about what's happening in the country, about Judeo-Christian values and Greek tradition and subjectivism and individualism and basically the degrading of Western society and the social and political fabric of the country. It's very interesting digging into what your book is about. But they called you the alt-right sage without the rage. And then you got upset about that, justifiably so, for good reason. And then they went back and changed it. They changed it to Inside the Mind of Ben Shapiro, a radical conservative. What say you?
Well, there's no such thing as a regular conservative. So, frankly, I'm embracing the title. It's like Beto O'Rourke. I'm rad, dude. I can skateboard and everything, brah. But what is amazing about it is to be ignorant enough to call me a member of the alt-right when I have probably been the leading antagonist of the alt-right for at least the last 4 years. I was their #1 target online, according to the ADL in 2016. I still have to hire security to walk me back and forth to synagogue because of the alt-right. to label me that way just demonstrates either the ignorance or the malice of members of the media who don't wish to do a simple Google search.
I mean, there's definitely a fascination with you. When you read this article, they're trying to figure out why you're so popular. Why do kids at college campuses care what this guy has to say? They talk about how you're impeccably dressed and you're sharp in every way. They can't figure out, Ben.
Well, I mean, obviously, it is because of my great handsomeness and physical size. I'm very intimidating, and people are just attracted to me the same way that they would be to Tom Cruise. That's just who I am, and that's what my wife tells me anyway.
As she should. All wives should tell their husbands that. Eric Holder said, I wish we could go back to, the president wants to go back to when America was great, and he sees that as a racist assessment in the president's eyes. You talk a lot about what makes the idea of America great in your book. So what would you say to him about that comment?
I mean, it's an asinine comment. Really, there are two views of the United States. View number one is that the United States is founded on eternal, true, immutable, and good principles. And we haven't always lived up to those principles. But the story of America is that the foundational philosophy of the country is inherently good and rooted in human nature and natural law and God's creation. And that's what American philosophy is about. And again, it's a job of trying to expand that promise to all Americans. And then there's the view of Eric Holder, which is that America was founded on racial hierarchy and that all of these ideas of Western civilization are essentially a facade in favor of perpetuating this evil power hierarchy. Well, if you feel that way, you have to rip up American civilization at its roots. I don't think most Americans believe that. I think most Americans do believe that America has been great in the past. There's no point at which America was, quote unquote, better across the board for everyone. But there are certainly moments in American history that we can point to. Was America not great when we liberated Europe? Was America not great when Martin Luther King was speaking on the Mall in Washington? Was America not great when we were defeating the Soviet Union in the Cold War, or when we were creating such prosperity that 80% of the world's population was lifted out of abject poverty since 1980? It seems like America was great all of those times.
The book is #1, and I'm not kidding. They can't keep it on the shelves. Ben, congratulations. Good to see you as always. Thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot.